Radio. Homegrown Radio. Real 92.3.
All right, we back at it. Homegrown Radio. Chuck Dizzle, DJ Hed.
West Coast.
Hey, look, we got this is not just a special guest, right?
No.
This is the homie. This is day one.
Family.
This is, I mean, we can give it the official introduction, the radio personality, TV host / author /
Hey.
She gonna probably have another title before she leaves here.
Yeah.
The one and only, our family, Devi Brown. I mean,
Devi Brown.
Devi Brown. Let's get it right.
Yeah, new brand.
New brand.
Devi Brown.
New
year,
ladies
new
and
her.
gentlemen. New brand,
The
new her.
artist formerly known as Devi Dev.
Appreciate you coming on through. It's been a long. You know, this is the first time we've actually recorded all together at one time. You know that, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Is it?
This is the first time. We've probably
Wow.
done stuff like on camera on some side, but the official like show type shit. Because when me and you, Dev, when we were at K-Day, Hed wasn't officially in the building, but he was in the building. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. He was getting snuck in after hours.
Yes.
Exactly. And that's funny because you were sneaking him in.
Hey, yeah, you know what? I want to say this too before we get too far into it. Dev actually is the one who used to sneak me into the radio station when I wanted to learn how to work the boards and shit. And I just wanted to watch. It was like Saturday, a weekend shift or something. And she's like, "Yeah, come through." And then like, "Let's walk this way," because I don't know who in the office. And we used to walk
they'd
the
be
long.
like, who are you bringing into the studio? You can't have people around the equipment.
Yeah, so I would come in there and I was look. She took pictures of me and all kind of shit. She could have lost her fucking
you
job.
should have been doing.
Shit I should not have been doing. Shout out to my friend Dev.
Yeah, man. And
I just wanted to learn.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes to show, like, I love the way the progression has been throughout the years, but definitely from day one, I mean, you've been somebody that we're just proud of. You know what I'm saying? Just to see what you've been doing, what you've been able to do, and what I really want to talk about is a lot of the risks that you took throughout the years to get where you are now, and how you constantly do that throughout the years, and you know why. You know what I mean?
Well, can I just say, first of all, hey, I'm happy to be here. Thank you. When I was driving up here, the whole time I was like, God, like we might accidentally talk for 3 hours.
It might be some
Because there's so much.
So much shit. Yeah.
And like the three of us have so much history, but also history like in different kind of ways.
Absolutely.
Like we have radio history, but also just being on the front lines of like the New West movement and you know, shine getting that back on the West Coast. Like we got war stories.
Yeah.
We got war stories of crazy radio adventures. Both of us, you know, on the come up and learning the game. And you and me got crazy stories more so on like
in the
music side in the streets. Like back
And
when you was
people
doing
don't know,
bobblehead videos.
You
and
used to be in Hey, let's not talk about that one.
Bobblehead. Wow.
Dev used to be in the streets for real. Like I remember you being like off of Stocker and like Crenshaw and like at the studio with the homies. Like Dev used to be in the streets,
but it
wasn't always, you know.
It's crazy. Like I feel like all of us came up in such like a magical time that doesn't really exist right now. You know, there's going to be other magical times for everybody grinding it out right now, but we were in this sweet spot of can we cuss on here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just in case I accidentally say something.
Yeah.
I'm going to say some shit.
We're going to say some shit.
Got this.
Like we all came up in this moment in time where nobody was fucking with the West Coast.
At all.
Like Game had came out and he killed it, and then it was a desert for years.
Yep.
And nobody, not only were they not checking for the music, but it was just like this hunger and a desire to make people understand the talent we had here.
Right.
And, you know, that's how we all came up under so many artists that are now like massive deals, you know,
crazy.
And built relationships that just kind of surpassed the industry.
I think one of my memories is like when we were all together and we was all just trying to figure it out. And I remember asking you like, you know, what are we doing? Like, and you was like, I don't know, but we doing it. Like,
what year do you think this was?
This shit had to be like 2008 and 9.
Wow.
Was it 8 or 9?
Yeah, probably 7, 8.
6,
yeah.
6. Oh, 8, 7, 2007, 8.
Yeah.
Something like that. And I was just like, I was just trying to be on. Like, I ain't gonna lie, I was trying to be in the video.
You trying to pop.
I was trying to be in the video. Like, I didn't fucking know what was going on. I just knew that I was broke and I didn't want to be.
Yeah.
And like,
That's some real shit, though.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, like we were like in the streets in the sense that like, you know, like things weren't as glamorous, I think, as they are now.
Nah, we definitely didn't have.
There definitely was not documenting of everything. Like we had MySpace pages, but
MySpace
people didn't really have
flip
digital
cams.
cameras like that.
Right.
Yeah.
You was on if you had a flip cam.
Yeah.
Oh, the flip cam
So
shit.
we were like
man.
some of the first documenters, like in this new millennial way of getting the movement out. And we'd be at, I mean, like all the shows, the random spots in Linwood and Long Beach, and like I'm talking like gutter little
spots,
clubs.
Yeah,
like,
I was gonna say I think that's
terrible.
the first spot I remember. And that's the only. I know we've probably seen each other plenty of times. That's the first time I actually officially remember meeting you. It was some spot in Linwood. I don't know who it was. I think it was the G Malone show. It was something that was going on. But I remember. Oh, that's Dev. That's the ones that all the homies are talking about. That's from Zombie Radio. You know what I'm saying?
Zombie Radio.
Fucking radio.
That's a throwback.
And with the thing that I respected about you at that time was you were one of the people that you can tell, and we were all in that space of loving terrestrial radio, right? You know what I'm saying? Loving 92.3 The Beat, loving Power 106 at the time. Even though for me, I always put this out there, like I felt like at that time when you were growing up, you had to pick. You had to pick Power 106.
Yeah,
you had
it was
to pick
like a
the
gang.
Beat.
Yeah.
It was a gang. And I fell on the side of the Beat, and it was no sides like that, but it was like I listened to Jonathan in the House Party. I listened to Theo. I listened to obviously Julio G. The only person at that time that I fucked with over at Power was Big Boy, and then the Goodfellas. That was and the Baker Boys before they took their transition out. But I say all that to say we were really in the grit of trying to figure out what it was, and we had the respect of our peers at that time to kind of usher us into it. Me interning at the Beat, and then you having your start with the Goodfellas.
Yeah.
So
it was this kind of moment too where at that point, because like things changed so rapidly in like really a 5-year time span, the way that we consume music, the way that we share ourselves as personalities, like the game completely changed in this really small micro generation of time. But at the time that we were coming up, it was like you had your really iconic personalities that were still on the radio, but they were kind of disconnected from, and I know everyone always says this, but they were kind of disconnected from like the streets in the sense that there was this bubbling new thing that was happening that really nobody knew about.
Right.
And we were some of the first people that were kind of like in that and on that and sharing that. I remember like I used to, back when you'd really have like physical mixtapes and stuff, like there was not blogs like at that time, like nobody was putting music up via blogs. There was Dub CNN and West Coast Riders.
You had the forum and shit like that,
but really only like a select few knew about that and how to get those music.
It was like a cult.
The West Coast was a cult. The New West was a cult. And there were not really many people who had status plugged into it that had like these big platforms. And so I remember like I used to just collect all the mixtapes and then like send them to people, like
really
just on like GP, just like
love.
You got to know what's happening out here. Like we haven't fallen off. Like
I know you were definitely very vocal about how our music scene was, because I know I was, like a lot of us that come from this class, like we were like, it's West everything.
Oh my God.
And it was like,
right. And it's funny because like since I've since worked at radio in other markets, like a lot of like maybe my following doesn't know that.
Yeah.
But it was like when I look back, like I was looking through pictures recently, there was not one picture where I wasn't like
throwing up the dub.
You know what I mean? Like that in every picture. Like, like it used to be like I really felt so protective about West Coast culture that I thought it was 96 again.
Absolutely.
Like you don't mess with Let it be known. You don't mess with the West Coast. Like I would be ready to fight off of stuff.
Because there was, a lot of people, like you said, it was dry not only in the industry, but dry really out here. There were no real shows, like these major venues weren't letting shows in, and then you had to deal with all that. And then, like for me, what happened was I would go visit my cousins in different areas or whatever. They would call in and tap into me and ask me who's the artist that's popping out, and I'll let them know what's going on. They're like, we don't know nothing about that. Man. All you guys got is Dre, Snoop, and that's it. Like, and so it was like more or less like, no, we got to prove that we have some shit going on. My thing is, how did you actually put the word out there prior to doing the internship, like with the Goodfellas? Like when you, like for me, okay, I did it with people that I worked with, right? There was a certain amount of circle of people that I worked with, and we knew all about the dub CNNs and shit like that.
Yeah.
But getting that word out there prior to, really social media bubbling, aside from telling people and sending mixtapes, how were you vocal in telling people that you wanted to be a personality at that point in time?
I mean, there's so much that I feel like I have to always wrap into the arms of the universe and just like divine timing, because that's really what so much of my life is boiled down to, is divine timing. Like, I've always worked my ass off and had a really strong work ethic. I grew up as the only child. We moved around constantly. So like at every juncture of school, like, levels of school, I was always starting a new school around Southern California. So that inbred in me a certain level of fearlessness, like a certain level of not worried what other people thought, or it's okay to be by yourself. Like, you don't have to always be surrounded by people. Like, it gave me a certain, like, nomad quality where I could just pick up and move in any way. Right. And so that was a big part of it.
And all the areas that you were growing up in, too. I mean, you grew up in different, like, from Watts to West Covina to...
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the thing. Like, people always are like, oh, so where? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, how much time do you got?
Right,
because at different moments of my life, I lived everywhere, from the Valley to Hollywood to Santa Monica to Venice to West LA to Azusa, went to school in West Covina, to Pasadena, Alhambra, Watts, like a lot of different places wrapped up in who I was and just my access to culture and different types of people that make up this melting pot of Los Angeles. Yeah. But when I was in college, it really started out with a great friend of mine named Tony Price. And he was one of the most remarkable people I'd ever met. He had already graduated college, but he was still kind of around. I went to Cal State Northridge.
Okay.
Go Matadors. And there used to be this poetry night, and he was the host of it. And it was a night that changed my life, because growing up, I was obsessed with Big Boy. I was obsessed with Theo, with Julio G. Like, they were the most mind-blowingly amazing representations ever to me. And I used to sleep with a radio in my bed. I had this hot pink, it said like Kids Boom or something like that. Like, and I would sleep with it, and I would listen to all the underground hip hop shows at night. I would wake up, sit in traffic for an hour to go to school and listen to Big Boy. So I always knew I wanted to touch people through media, but I thought I'd be more a behind-the-scenes person than in front of the mic or in front of the camera person. So when I went to school, when I went to college for broadcast journalism. I'm at this poetry night, and the guy on stage says, I'm about to start an internet talk show. Anybody want to be down?
Hell yeah.
Right? And at that time, and I know internet talk show now is like internet, talk show. Everybody can do that. I have my own this. I have my own that.
Yeah. Not at all.
This is like 03. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, this is 04. Like, that didn't exist. We still had dial-up modems. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right. She was fucked up.
You was privileged if you had
speakers on my computer. Like,
damn. Dude.
So at that time, I was just like, oh, that sounds cool. So I remember afterwards, I just said, I'm down. What can I do? How can I be down? That was kind of like my mantra of my teens and early 20s. How can I be down?
Yeah.
What can I do?
What can I do? Yeah.
And so I kind of started showing up at his setup, and he had this radio show on the internet, and we started building this kind of little following, and we started throwing parties on, like, in Santa Monica and on Sunset Boulevard, like, for the show. We kind of built this little tribe of people that like to hear this show. And from there, we started this other show called Zombie Radio, which was all about underground hip hop. And at this time, we rented like a little studio space, and we're just like, we're doing it for the culture. And we had, of course, like your Crooked Eyes. We had,
J-Rock, Mike
Stro, Glasses, Krondon, Strong Arm Steady. Like, we had a lot of really, like, incredible people. And I remember we had J-Rock on in the interview. Like, of course, K-Dot's there, but he's just chilling watching J-Rock. Like,
J-Rock,
all right, this is how you do it, you know? And so it was this really special moment. So that's initially what kind of put that battery in my back. I was like, okay. And at that time especially, I mean, it was rare. I was a woman, a girl anyway.
Yeah, no, rightfully so.
I was a young woman moving in this world, and that gave me a lot of access because that wasn't happening at all. So that gave me a chance to really stand out and really, like, figure out like who and how I wanted to be and how to grow this. And from there, I used to always listen to the Goodfellas on Power 106, and they are just two of the most incredible men I've ever been blessed to know, Romeo and DJ. And I sent them a MySpace message, you know, because I had that
like
battery in my back.
A DM.
Yeah.
That was an old school DM.
Old school DM, like, yeah,
I message.
Because I had heard that this new radio station, K-Day, had started, you know, and they left Power and went to K-Day. And so I started listening to it, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to just try. And so I sent them, you know, one of those kind of now cliche like messages like, I'll get your coffee, like whatever you need. Like, how can I be down?
Yeah.
But you know what's funny is that that's not so cliche if you think about it. Like a lot of people, and me and Hed talk about this too, a lot of people that are trying to intern nowadays, they have a sense of entitlement. Like,
oh my God.
yeah.
it is ridiculous. Like thinking about the things that I would have done or I did to get into radio, like walking my resume up to Power, walking it to the beat, walking to whatever stations would take it without, before even calling, just going up there to say, hey, what can I do to be inside this building? So you had that intuition and know-how back then, but it doesn't happen now like that.
But you know what I think the difference is between us and some of the people we've encountered today? Because I don't want to generalize,
Absolutely.
but I think a lot of people are willing to do the step of like putting themselves out there with a message to say, oh, I really admire you. Can I learn from you? I'll intern. I'll be your assistant. But they look at working with you in an internship capacity as how can you help me reach my dream?
Right.
Versus how can I aid you so that I have the right to come and learn from you and soak up information.
Yeah,
you know?
I noticed that. Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, because my job, if I have an intern or someone that wants to shadow me, my destiny isn't wrapped up in helping you achieve your dreams. That will happen if you stay close.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to always help you, and I'm going to always try to, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to say, oh, do all this stuff I don't feel like doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to always let you learn from me. But you need to figure out how you are necessary and valuable and can excel what I am already doing.
Hell yeah.
And by doing that, you get the luxury of being able to learn from me for free.
What do you think the disconnect is now? Or not just nowadays, but in general when people do that, when that disconnect happens?
I think everything is so visible that, like, when we were grinding and when we were broke as hell, like sharing a Del Taco burrito, you know what I mean?
I remember all that shit.
Nobody saw that part of things, right? You could still pull it together to be in front of people because we weren't documenting all of our lives in the way that is now kind of required or at least standard.
Yeah.
And so I think for us, there wasn't a fear at starting from the bottom. I felt proud to shine in my grind. Yeah. Like I used to run around and be like, I'm an intern. I'm an intern for the Goodfellas.
Like, got an internship. I'm on.
Another day at the office,
Absolutely.
you know, and I felt grateful for the experience. And I think now it's like you have interns that are telling people they're not an intern. They're like, oh, I'm a radio personality.
Right.
And it's like, not yet.
Yeah.
You can be, not yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it's really just that for some of the younger people, there is this real anxiety of not wanting to be seen as not already having it together because so much of who they are is documented.
Yeah.
And we didn't really have that stress.
But I think for the most part, like I think it's a good and a bad thing, because I think it's a good thing because it weeds out the bullshit. Like when we always talk about, we have interns, and even at Homegrown, like at our studio, and we have people, and we just tell them straight up, like, hey, you want to fuck with us? Come through. Just pull up.
Just pull up.
That's it. We don't ask them to take out no trash. We don't ask them to bring no food. Pull up.
Yeah.
If they pull up consistently, okay, what do you want to do? What are you trying to do? What are you looking for? What are you looking at? What do you want to get out of this situation? Even the interns we have now, well, actually people that moved up from internship, shout out to Lupe.
Man, one time.
It's like, okay, now that you're here, what is it that you want to get from this? So that way we can deliver to you what it is that you need: experience, knowledge, game, wisdom, whatever it is. And then what's crazy is a lot of people don't know.
Yeah. And that's okay, because at a certain time in your life, like, you don't have to know everything, but you do got to show up for yourself. Like, I'm a big fan of telling people, like, explore every avenue. When I was interning for the Goodfellas, I also interned at Interscope and Universal, which probably maybe was not allowed to work in radio and the label, but
hell no, that shit wasn't allowed.
you know, it gave me a cut above everybody else because I understood the dynamics of everything involved, and it taught me how to really move and how to really create relationships in all facets of the industry, you know? And I think when I walked into my internship with the Goodfellas, from day one, I was like, how can I help them?
Yeah.
Like, what do they need that I can do so that I can make their life easier and they'll let me keep coming around,
Hell
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, I need for the privilege, the opportunity to be in the room.
And I was so poor. And I remember I had like an extra $10. I was like, I'll just eat less this week. And I went to Staples and I bought binders and I bought dividers. And I stayed up all night. I printed out their pictures. This is so corny now, but I printed out their pictures and I put one on a binder, and one binder was for Romeo, one binder was for DJ. I put like note paper in there. I put, you know, a divider that said interviews, a divider that said, you know, commercials. Like,
Damn.
and I was like, I'm going to help them stay organized so they could do their job great. So, you know, I'm like going into the office with my binders, like, okay, guys, this is what I think, you know, and they loved that. They were blown away by that. And they appreciated that my MO was to make them look good and not just make myself look good.
Right.
You know, not just make myself look good so I can go have my own thing and now be the star. It was like I knew how to pay my dues. I knew for the next year, the next 2 years, I'm grinding, and it is all about how to help you so that I can set myself up.
And that came from one to always be behind the scenes anyway. That wasn't like for one to shine. It was like I literally want to help out. You know what I'm saying? This is how I knew you were on a different path, right? You were like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do with this opportunity? And I was so fucked up by that. I just wanted to be in the building. Yeah. I didn't know what the fuck was going on, but
I just want to be in the building.
That shit right there, and I don't think I ever told you that. That shit changed the course of my career, because it was like, you got to have a fucking plan. Figure out what the fuck you want to do, because that's going to take you to that next step. And me not being prepared in that, I think I was like, I think I even said I don't know or some shit like that. But and you were kind about it. You were like, yeah, we'll figure it out. You know, we just had a powwow. But that right there was like, okay, that shit, you have to really know where you want to go in your career, because that's going to dictate the next step and the next opportunity and things of that nature. So you were always one to have like 3 or 4 steps ahead of what was going on. So for you at that point, fast forward, I definitely want to get into this, because the whole bullshit with K-Day going down, or you know, you getting fired over there, that shit was fucking heartbreaking too, right? I told you the story, right?
Yeah, I remember.
This is some bullshit. So these motherfuckers, right? This is okay. Fuck it, we gonna get into it. So
hold on, I want to know what story you know.
Yeah, well, this is
because I might have a little bit of a different take.
No, you're definitely gonna have a different take, and I want to get your side of what's going on too.
Okay.
So they call this big meeting, right, at the station. So everybody come down. We're gonna have a big station meeting. We're gonna figure out what's going on. Blah 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 blah. They have 2 sets of meetings, and this is my introduction as to how fucked up radio and politics were. Right? They have 2 sets of meetings, and they told, I'm thinking everybody's supposed to come there at one time, so they said come there at 11:30. We get there at 11:30, and I see Dev and I see other people packing boxes and crying. I'm like, oh shit, it's going down.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're obviously the next set of people they're going to tell that this shit is folding.
This shit over.
I know how it is. They're going to tell us the station just it's collapsed. They're going to go to a different mark, whatever. So we go in there.
After the first meeting.
After the first meeting. It's about 9, maybe 10 of us in there. I said, okay, hey guys, just wanted to let you know, we're moving in a different direction, X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. You guys are the only one to stand.
Everybody in this room.
Everybody in this room is staying. What the fuck do you mean everybody what about everybody else? Oh yeah, we're going to go in a different direction, blah, 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 blah. And from there, like, everything just went numb. I'm like, what the fuck? This is fucking... I was speechless at that moment.
Yeah.
And to be able to, at that point, to be able to confront you or talk to you, it was devastating. You know what I'm saying? Like, because your friend, somebody that helped you get into the building, you know what I'm saying, that you respect in this game, is now outside the shit. You know what I'm saying? And it was it was really hard to deal with that, because that was my first like wake up call to, yo, this shit is it's a fucked up industry.
This shit is real.
You know, I think so first of all, that was one of the most depressing time periods in my life. But let me start from the top before I get to that. So, you know, what was interesting at that time of working for K-Day, and it's a different place now than it was then.
Absolutely.
We were it was like a boot camp for how many things can go wrong.
Yeah.
you know, in your career, and this is all before like I was 25, you know, and it was like this crash course in business, in haters, in so many things. And my experience there, it was my first terrestrial radio station I ever worked at. It started off as the best experience of my life. Like when I'm interning with the Goodfellas, like we are on a high, you know, like Theo had come on, one of my biggest idols in life, and was the program director. He is the first person that ever said, stop just being behind the scenes. I want to put you on air.
Wow.
You know, he was like, I remember he called me in his office and he was just like, I really like your voice and I really like your presence. Starting Monday, quit your other job because you're going to do the traffic for the Steve Harvey Morning Show.
And what were you doing before that?
Oh, God. So at that time, and I actually super lucked up, I was still going to college. So I was still in school. And I had a day job. I had a few different gigs. Like first I got a job that I worked from midnight till 7 a.m. at a call center so that I could have enough time to intern, so that when I got out of school, I could like get a ride to LA and do my internship. And then I would come in before the Goodfellas started so I could learn from everybody else. And then I'd be there for them. And I did that for like a year. And I existed off maybe like 3 hours of sleep every day for a year. My car had broke down, so it took me like 3 hours to get home every day. It was a lot. It was a crazy
Let's
time.
put this in perspective. So you work at this call center from 12 to 7 a.m. 12 midnight to 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And this call center is where?
It was in right off of Venice. Was that like West LA? Like
West LA. So at
like
that point,
National off the 10.
You get off at 7 a.m. and go home and sleep for just a little bit, or you go straight to the station? In some cases, I know you were going straight to the station too.
So that was another year of hardship that happened after this internship. So while I was still interning, I would usually try to crash with a friend in Northridge so that I could wake up and go to class. And then I would go to the station and then, And at that time, like I had to give up my apartment because, you know, I'm going after this internship. So I gave up my apartment and I moved back in with my mom, who was living more towards the IE at the time. So imagine trying to leave like Wilshire Boulevard.
I'm trying to put it in
get
perspective
to the IE
of this
and
traffic.
go to the Valley. Like in the course of a day to go from the IE to the Valley to Wilshire Boulevard, and then try to go be down at all these shows. Like
be seen or be in the midst of what's going on.
It was a hustle.
It was only God that saved me, because I used to be so tired that I would be on the freeway and I would hallucinate.
Oh my God!
And I would see things and I'd be like, like, you know, it was a crazy time.
Wow.
Then I talked to Theo and he was like, okay, quit your other job.
Right.
Oh wait, no. Before that, I had found that I did so much. It gets convoluted. So I'll fast forward. I'll tell that another day. Theo's like, quit your job. I want you to start doing the weather and the traffic for the Steve Harvey Morning Show. I need you at work, because it was syndicated at that time. So he was like, I need you at work by 4:30 in the morning.
Shit.
Every day.
So you got the call center is a wrap. You got to be done with that.
Yeah. So I had to find another gig. And then it kind of helped because I had got hit by a car, and then I ended up getting some insurance money.
God
and so
damn.
that helped me a little bit, you know.
She just blew past.
Right. I just got hit by a car.
Okay, go ahead.
There's so much to this that I just have to try to.
Goodness gracious.
So you start doing the weather and the traffic.
So I started doing the weather and the traffic, and it was your typical like, hey, Los Angeles, today is going to be 105 and sunny, and there's traffic on the 405 freeway currently, and da-da-da-da-da. And so what I would do was I would because I had to do that at the top of every hour. So I would do it at the top of the hour. I would set my alarm for 35 minutes, and then I would lay on the floor under the studio panel and sleep. And then my alarm would go off. Then I would wake up. I would do the next one. And I would do that for 4 to 5 hours in a row. And so then I would leave the show, and I would go. I had changed to night classes, so I would go to work. I would go to work, then I would go to school. Then I would try to come back for the Goodfellas night show because I still wanted to learn from them and have a chance to know how to do like radio, have access to the guests, like, do that. And I did that for a year. Then, at that time, K-Day was kind of chaotic. Like it switched owners' hands. Like I think we went through 3 different owners, 3 different general managers, 3 different PDs. And at that time,
Can I just say I hated the name 93.5, the Beat FM? I hated that fucking name for so long. And, anyway, keep going. Yeah,
it's kind of rough. It get rough.
Yeah, that shit was
even
tricky.
in that chaos, there was a lot of beauty for me because it gave me the chance to rise in the ranks really fast. So by the age of 22, it's like, I just got promoted to music director,
which is
and I'm
huge.
promotions director.
Yeah.
And I'm a part-time talent. And I'm this, and so I was able to finally work there for really, really cheap, but quit my other job so I could work there 15 hours a day.
Right.
So flash forward when all of that happened, it was so bizarre because not to like build myself up, but I was working there all day. I was the glue of the station.
Absolutely.
And then so many people that had ended up getting hired there were like people that I like plugged in.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it was very strange. And the real reason I got let go, and I'm not going to get too much into it and I'm not going to say names, but I had someone that worked at that station that I was best friends with, that I like loved to my core. And I thought we were both two women who were grinding it out and supporting each other. We both had dreams to be on air. So we were like, if I had a hookup, I was more popping in the streets than her at the time, but she was so talented. She's one of the best radio voices. She's amazing. But I was more popping at that time because it was just my moment.
Right.
I had done a lot of other stuff in underground hip hop and things were coming into fruition and I just had the relationships. And I didn't know in the course of our friendship for the few years that we worked together there that she had begun to like really hate me because of it. Like on a very like almost sinister, deep level of I want you to fail in life so I can feel okay.
Wow, that's crazy.
So what I didn't know, I'm just walking around happy-go-lucky at the station, working hard as fuck, and then plugging people in. And I didn't know that for an entire year before that, while pretending to be my friend and staying over at the house, we're going to events together, she was alienating me from everybody in the building. At least many of the women, and like making up stories about me, saying that I was a hater and that I tried to like push her down and I try to make sure people don't win and like all of this stuff. And then like made up many lies about my behavior, things that I might be doing that never happened, in the industry. And what I didn't know was that her and the HR person had become best friends. And because we at that time were not owned by like a corporation, it was a privately owned company, there weren't as many checks and balances. So that HR person was like padding my file.
Get the fuck out of here.
Oh,
padded my file.
So they was putting dirt on you that you didn't even...
That I had no clue about, because I'm just working hard every day and I'm thinking that I'm like an asset and I'm getting stuff done. And so this was like a year-long plot and plan conspiracy. And so one day I look up and I was like delegating to somebody and they had like an attitude with me. And this is somebody that I had like got an internship for because she had hit me on MySpace, just like I did the Goodfellas.
Yeah.
So I got her in the building and she had like this really like, I know energy.
Right.
The energy was bad. And I pulled her outside. I was like, what's the deal? I was like, I brought you in, so I don't understand what this energy is. And she ended up breaking down and telling me what the girl had been doing for the past year, all this different stuff. And like, I was devastated. Like I cried like I had broke up with a dude. Because I really care about people if you're my friend. And I couldn't fathom that level of betrayal. And so it was devastating. And then it just so happened that like the next week the station got sold. So you know how it goes when you get new people in, they don't know how hard you worked and they don't care.
Right.
So every time you get someone new that comes in as a boss, you have to reprove yourself.
Hell yeah.
Right.
That gets exhausting if you're really putting in the work, because I had done that 4 times.
Right. It's like, how many times do I got to prove myself? Shit.
So when this new company came in and bought the company, they just got in an office with the HR person, who I got to say now does not work in HR or radio. But they got in the office with her and they're like, okay, we need to cut the fat. Who do we need to let go of? What are we doing? Well, the first file that comes out, I found out is mine. So anybody that woman and also the other person that conspired with her did not like, this was the prime moment for them to assassinate everybody, right?
Wow.
So a lot of the people that ended up on that first chopping block were either people they viewed that they could do without, maybe the job, someone else could absorb it, but it was also people that they didn't want around.
Wow.
People that wasn't at the cool kids table.
Yeah, and I found all this out later.
Damn,
and so, and I remember that day. And I got to shout out one of my best friends in the world, Adrian Scott, who is still the PD at K-Day and has done incredible things with K-Day and with concerts and with
Salute
everyone.
to AD.
Yeah.
He's been one of my biggest champions for years and one of the people that has consistently given me probably the most opportunities of my life.
It's amazing.
And he, and I remember that morning, he knew it was going to happen. But he couldn't do anything about it. And he was devastated.
Yeah.
And I walked in like, what's going to happen today? And he was like, look, Dev, whatever happens, just stay strong and know that no matter what, I got you and you'll bounce back. And I was like, what is he talking about?
What are you talking about?
Because in my mind, I'm like, well, if I run the promotions department, I'm the music director. I'm the person that gets the 3 a.m. call to come in and fix the station repeatedly.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm good.
I'm the one that you can't possibly get rid of,
Right.
Well, everybody is disposable, but I walked in and, they let us go. And that was it. And then I had heard that person who I looked at as my best friend was like, I don't know how she going to survive now. How she going to pay her rent? She'll never work in radio. Yes. And I found out that she specifically felt like if I existed, she couldn't shine.
Wow.
And I think it's really important for anybody listening right now to know, like, even if you feel overlooked at a job, the universe works in a multitude of ways. Right. And as long as you know you're giving life, your career, whatever, the best effort, you will always be covered and you'll always be elevated when it's your time.
Hell yeah.
That just happened to be my moment.
Right.
It didn't mean it was always going to be my moment. And it didn't mean that you couldn't win because I was having a moment.
Everybody gets a moment.
Yeah.
At some point in time, yeah.
And then to flash forward, but it just... I was in a deep depression. I didn't work for 2 months. I didn't have money like that. Right. I had my apartment in the Valley. I didn't know what to do. I was surviving by helping artists write bios and doing some lightweight consulting because I had so many relationships at labels and whatnot. And AD helped me stay afloat. There were many times that because he respected my work with him so much and knew that I was a genuine person, would cut me a check and just be like, here's $100, pay one of your bills.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he would try to help me by saying like, hey, I need somebody to... he would still have me on selector on the low, doing, scheduling music. It helped me still feel confident in what I could do. Like one of my great friends, Mar Brown, rest in peace.
Yeah, salute to Mar.
He used to be like, he would give me little work to do and so that he could pay me so that I, it wasn't just like, oh, poor you.
Right.
You're so pitiful.
Right.
Here's some.
Check,
yeah, it's like, no, he was like, come on, Dev, I'm going to put you to work. I need you to do this, this, and this. Or he'd be like, we lived very close to each other at the time. He'd be like, hey, can you come by and watch the kids for date night?
Yeah.
And then he would sneak money into my purse before I left,
Wow.
And because I'd be like, no, you don't have to pay me. No, it's all good. I'm just chilling. And he would sneak money into my purse before I left to make sure I could eat,
People look out.
Yeah. And then flash forward again, the station, you start noticing that things are falling apart if the one person who was doing everything isn't there.
That motherfucker was crumbling. I'm sitting there holding on oh, shit, this shit going down.
There were certain things
There's
that,
a lot of
I
things.
did that weren't getting done.
There were a lot of
your
things.
FCC filings, your,
Bruh.
so much. And so I remember one of the new owners reached out to me because he had heard about me from AD and from my friend Linda, who are still putting in good words for me there, of what I had done and helped build. And he asked me to dinner. He found my number and he was like, can you, I don't know if this restaurant even exists anymore, but there was this restaurant, I think it was called Beso, and it was in Hollywood. And he was like, can you meet me for dinner? And I met him there and he was like, I want to bring you back. So then,
Damn.
2 to 3 months later, I ended up going back to the station. And then, I helped them launch this old school format that was the brainchild of AD and was an amazing change for the station. And then
It's still to this day.
I worked there till I left. But yeah.
So hold on, before we get into you leaving to go to Houston, I want to say I don't think we ever talked about that. I mean, we've talked about it, but during this whole time, I remember this specifically, right? And I think it's important for people to know because a lot of people don't like. A lot of people know you as the personality and whatever, but you really look out for your friends.
Absolutely.
Like,
thank you.
You know what I'm saying? Like people that you like, that you care. I mean, everybody in general, but your friends, like you really look out and take care of them. So I remember this one time I was going to Vegas. And my phone got turned off because I was broke. I had no money. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was what it was. So I was trying to go to Vegas for some kind of opportunity. It was a conference or some shit. And at this point, like I said, I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm a DJ. At this time, I don't think I was a DJ yet.
You weren't even a DJ.
I was just a radio personality. Right. Like, I was just trying to be a personality.
Right.
And people thought I was funny or whatever. So I was like, all right, I'm trying to be a personality. And before the DJ and shit, so what happened was, it was like some kind of bootleg phone I had, and it got cut off because I couldn't pay the bill. And my checking account for all the college students that listen to us, y'all know what the overdraft shit looked like. You know what I'm saying? So my shit was overdrafted like $200, right? My checking account was overdrafted like $200, and my cell phone bill was like $80 or some shit like that. Or no, it was like $65, but it was cut off. And what's crazy is, I was like, I think we were talking on, I think I was at home. I was on like Google Messenger or
it had to be AIM
or something.
It had to be AIM. It was AIM.
My old AIM was Debbie Dev LA.
It had to be AIM. I think it was AIM. And we were talking on AIM, and you were like, yo, what's up? What's going on or something? And you was like, no, what's going on? And I wouldn't really tell you. And then like you kind of like got it on me like, yo, what's going on? I'm like, well, I'm trying to do this, and I got to go to Vegas. And she's like, Dev is like, hey, like, what do you mean you have to have a phone? That's how you make money. You can't work if you don't have a phone. Right. And at this point, I didn't have a job. Like I was just out here trying to figure it out. So I'm doing odds and ends like she was trying to figure it out. So we talking on AIM, and I'm like, I told her what was up. Basically, my phone is cut off. I ain't got shit. I don't have no money. I don't have nothing in the account. Mm-hmm. I done already went to Coinstar 4 times.
You maxed out your resources.
Resources are
gone. Right.
Shit is fucked.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, look. Basically, I'm overdrafted, and she's like, well, look, send me your account number. And we'll get your phone cut back on. I'm like, nah, I can't do it. She's like, nah. She's like, what? Like, why? What's the problem? How much is your phone? I'm like, $65-$70. What is the problem? And so I finally told her, look, my checking account
draft is.
If you send me $70,
that shit gonna suck.
That shit gonna get sucked right up because my shit is overdrafted $200. So she said, send me the account number and don't worry about it. I'm like, what do you mean? So I'm thinking like, okay, whatever. So I sent her the account number, but she hit me back. It was like, all right, check your account, pay your bill, and then we never have to talk about this again. And I'm like, what? So I checked my account. She deposited $300 in my fucking checking account, right?
You got an extra 20.
Now when you like 20 something,
right?
That means the world. Like she didn't even. She when we talked about it afterwards, she didn't even remember she did this. Yeah. That shit, I'll never forget that. Like in my life. So that's like one of them things that stand out to me to where it's like that shit meant like. I'm talking about that shit damn near like, my dad coming back into my life. Right. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Who's this nigga? That's your dad? Oh my gosh. You know what I'm saying? Hug me. You know what I'm saying? So it meant that much to me. I was like, fuck, dog, she really like fuck with me. Like,
yeah, I mean, but it goes to show like that's, and for the people that just see the radio personality, the host, they don't necessarily know the person. That's the type of person that you are. And I think that's why not only that we jail, but the people that are closest to you, they fuck with you. You know what I'm saying? Because you really care about your friends, and you'll do things like that's off the books, off the records that nobody has to even see.
She didn't even remember.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like in her mind, it's tapped out. That didn't even happen.
Because I think, and especially at that time, it was just magic. It was magic in Los Angeles then, and I think we were all so connected, like our circle, because we all felt this energy that something was about to get taken to the next level. And also we were so passionate. Like our hearts were good. Like none of us were like, we want to do this so people can know who we are. Look at me. It was like, we want to be a part of something that feels this right and we want to work. And I think that was it. It's like, you know, that energy I had extra at that certain time. There were plenty of times that I didn't have a pot to piss in.
We shared food.
Yeah, like literally, it's like, okay, can we come up with 75 cents to get this Del Taco special? Because they had 39-cent tacos at the time.
Tacos.
Like,
we done broke bread.
Taco
and it's
shells.
like, at this time, I had a little bit more. And so it was like, you know, when you hit me, like, you got to work. Like, you're destined to be a star. Like, you can't not have this opportunity because you won't have the ability to contact people. Like, we got to figure this shit out. And at some point, you know, like, I know just energetically, like, you are going to always look out for me, you know? And I think, too, like, I remember I told you, like, we don't have to ever speak of this again. So don't bring it up. Because I also didn't, I didn't want people asking me for money. I didn't want it to be, you know, I didn't want him to be like, yo, Dev turned
on. She
turned on my phone
right
for me. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, but then also, like, I didn't want Hed to feel like he was indebted to me. It's like, I happen to have it this month, so now you have it. But you don't owe me shit, you know, and you don't have to feel a certain kind of way when you come around me like I'm owed anything. Like, I did it, and now it's done, and let's fucking grind, you know?
And I think at that time, like, all these relationships are building. You know what I'm saying? You're doing early interviews with people that are going to be, obviously, stars down the line. You're making connections with, and I don't even think we spoke about this time, because even Wendy Williams was in L.A., and you met Charlamagne the God, obviously, around that time. So you're building these relationships with these people, and then you leave L.A.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Before you go to that, because I actually brought this up to Charlamagne. I remember when you introduced him to us, and we didn't know who the fuck he was. Like, we was like, oh, this is friend Charlamagne, he's dope. Like, woo, like, he does this and that. And at the time, I didn't put two and two together until he just recently told the story. Like, he wasn't being paid, like, really for this shit. You know what I'm saying? So it used to always, back in the day, I think when he used to, like, come and crash, like, at the crib or whatever, like, that type of shit, to me, it was like, well, he's on the radio. Like, you'd automatically, like, how people look at this, like, oh, check this on the radio. Like, of course why would he need to sleep at the homie house? That type of shit. So like, that was kind of crazy to me. But shout out to Charlamagne. I just want to point that out.
And you know what? I love Charlamagne so much. Like, words can't even do justice to just the type of person I think he is,
he's just like
and
you.
Who he's been in my life.
Yeah, both of y'all are like, y'all solid.
Thank you. I mean, he's incredible. He's given me so many opportunities that have just blown my mind. But
you give them interns, right?
Oh God! Don't believe what he says in the book.
My ass off when I see that. He's like, I spun it out.
Such a predator.
Allegedly, right?
No, so at that time, like, there was a small amount of time that our radio station went 100% syndicated. So it was they cleared out every personality, and so it was Steve Harvey in the morning. It was Wendy Williams in middays. It was Monique.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Monique.
In afternoons, which eventually that only lasted a month, and it turned into Michael Baisden in afternoons, and then it turned into Keith Sweat at night, right? Yeah. So it was a crazy
Charlamagne was on Wendy Williams' show.
He was on Wendy Williams' show. And so at that time, I was like the local producer, but it was a lot of work to keep the station syndicated all day. So, you know, we would send stuff to them, and I'd be coordinating with whoever the person was and running her boards and keeping the time on track and whatnot. And they had come in town for an event, and so me and Charlamagne had struck up a conversation. Now, before that time, we couldn't stream other radio stations at that moment in time in history. So I had heard of Wendy Williams because she had been on, like, VH1. She had a book out, like, Wendy's Got the Heat. But I didn't know who she was. I didn't know who any New York radio personalities were. And so, like, me and him just hit it off in the studio, and then we'd always communicate on MySpace or on text. So I'd be like, I would send him a message on MySpace and be like, oh, you know, y'all show is running over by like 5 minutes. Make sure you do such and such. And so he's one of the people that I would make sure, like, and he was like, you know, who's this? I'm like, oh, it's this kid named K-Dot. Like, you gotta listen. And he'd be like, oh, I fuck with this. Like, I fuck with J-Rock, you know? And when he would come back to LA, I would make it a point to be like, come with me to these hole-in-the-wall shows. So that's how, like, you know, everybody, you know, we all met and whatnot, but I would be like, oh, this is Charlamagne the guy, and he's doing this and he's doing that. And, you know, so he was like really there to like observe this kind of special moment in West Coast music history too.
Yeah, and it was, you gotta think, this is before shit was going viral. Like, this is before
This is before viral.
I mean, social media was there, the early days of Twitter and shit like that, but it wasn't like what it is now. You know what I'm saying?
But like the very early days of Twitter, where you couldn't even like, there was no technology to post a photo on Twitter.
There wasn't even TwitPic at this time.
There wasn't even TwitPic.
That's
like,
crazy, dude.
Okay, so all that happened. You end up getting an opportunity. Well, you end up going to Houston.
You leave.
Yeah.
You leave.
Which
and you
was like,
abandon
what
us.
the fuck?
And
Devi's leaving the West Coast.
She's leaving the West Coast.
One of the pillars out here of this new shit, and
crazy
niggas gotta hold this shit up without her. Like, that's what I was thinking. I'm like,
hey, no, you didn't think like oh shit, I gotta pull my own weight.
I gotta pull my own weight.
I gotta pull my own weight. And that's you skinny niggas. So, you know what I'm saying?
Do you remember too? Before I left, I had a going away
Hell
party.
yeah, at the Blue Monkey.
Hell yeah.
At the Blue Monkey, and all of LA hip hop came out like that.
Amazing.
I remember I had texts Dot and I was like, "Hey, would you come perform at my thing?" Right? Because I think at that time he had just had the Kendrick Lamar EP out,
Right.
So there was no like overly dedicated
it was Kendrick Lamar EP.
Yeah, and so, you know, he was like, "Yeah, big homie, I got you." He was like, "Can J-Rock and Schoolboy and Ab-Soul perform too?"
Hell yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, of course."
Pull up.
He was like, "Yeah, they want to come too and perform." And I was like, "Yeah, like let's do it." And you and I performed Thurs and YO, and we had a lot of people DJ, but it was crazy. So they came and they performed, and I had this like big send off.
You had the first Black Hippie show ever.
That's true.
That's crazy.
That is wild
crazy
to think about, right?
It's so funny too, because I didn't even know. Like, I remember at one point they were all there, and then everybody disappeared. I was like, "Where the hell did these TDE dudes go? Where's everybody?" And I remember like maybe 7 years later, I was interviewing Schoolboy somewhere else, and he was like, "Yeah, remember at your going away party, we got in this big ass fight outside, and we started doing such and such." And I was like, "There was a fight? What? What happened?"
That shit was crazy. But so you take this opportunity out there to Houston.
Yeah.
And I mean, talk about that. Why was it being from LA and doing what you love out here? Obviously the ups and downs, but you're still staying afloat. And a lot of people, especially when you look at the radio, LA, New York is where it's at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for you, why was it important to say, you know what, let me take this leap?
So I think there were two big reasons that I had to be really sober-minded about, which was, one, I needed money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And two, I needed more experience. Mm-hmm. You know, for kind of what I wanted to do. Right before that time, like, a lot had changed where I was working, and we did go all old school, and they decided to pull all personalities for 1 year and only do music, which was incredible for the station. Mm-hmm. Like, it built this cult-like appreciation and following for the station and the music. But for somebody who is 25, I think at the time I was still 24, you know, I don't want to just interview Big Daddy Kane.
Right.
Like, I want to interview him for sure, but also have a chance to do my passion, which is new artists and new music. And, you know, and it was just like, I felt like I had to make a choice. And I thought, if I stay here in the form that it is now, like, it's going to be me pressing pause on building myself for a certain amount of years till they're ready to like re-plug me in and do everything. And, you know, I remember one day I was sitting at my desk and God spoke to me so loud. And there's probably about 5 times that he's like literally yelled at me to the point where I was like, okay, like, yes, Lord, you know. Yeah. And that day I remember he yelled at me and he said, "If you don't leave now, you never will. And I can't give you what I have for you."
Damn.
And he literally said, "Get up and walk out," in that like booming God voice. "Get up.
Are
Devin,
you serious?
And walk out." Yeah,
You sound
swear
like
to God.
Theo. Get up, dog.
Yeah.
Walk out now.
And I remember I told my homie Trayvon, I was like,
Shout out to T. Smith, man.
I quietly started packing my stuff. And
You're literally at work right now, and you're like, okay, I hear this voice. I hear God. Let me
Not only am I at work, we had just had a concert of 12,000 people the night before that I hosted by myself. And I was emailing the blogs all of the recaps and the pictures to get us placements.
Early days of the blogs, by the way.
Early days of the blogs.
Damn.
And so as I finished sending all of my emails out to get placements and looks on these blogs, and that's when God talked to me. And so I quietly started putting all of my like belongings and collections in a box, and I logged out of my computer and I called Trayvon, who was in the studio, and I was like, I need you to help me to my car, you know? And so he walked over and I was like, just walk straight. Don't stop. Just take this stuff downstairs for me, okay? And he was like, all right, I got you. I like gave him my keys and he put the stuff in my car. And I walked in my boss's office, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I can't give you a two week notice, but I quit.
What?
Yeah. And I walked out. And at
That's crazy.
And
I never knew.
I've never heard this story.
I've never
really,
knew that. No.
I had no plan, because like I didn't know. I mean, I think like in my dreams, I was like, oh, maybe I'll go be on, you know, Power 106, or I don't know.
So the offer wasn't on the table. You have nothing at this point.
I had nothing.
Wow.
Not only did I have nothing, like we had just got paid our last check 2 days prior. So that meant I had no check coming.
Hell no.
That also meant I had no unemployment because I didn't get fired. I quit. So I drove to North Hollywood to my apartment, and I was just like, oh,
all right, God, what the fuck?
What do I do? You know? And
what the fuck?
Yeah. And so at that point, you know, I kind of went back to like what I was, you know, some of my side hustles. And I'm like, all right, let me write bios. Let me help people with their websites, or let me, you know, reach out to blogs
Make
for people.
ends meet.
And I ate 1 can of SpaghettiOs a day. And again, my dear friend and brother, Mar Brown, he was like, you know, come meet me for lunch. Like, I think my birthday had just happened. I didn't work for 3 months. Yeah.
Damn.
And he was like, come meet me for lunch, and I'll take you to lunch. And he was just like, have you ever thought about moving to Houston? I was like, what? Houston? I don't know. I had gone once for like
I'm a LA
I went
chick.
for like the core DJ retreat, or it was like Ozone Weekend
I remember
a couple
that.
years prior, and it was cracking.
Yeah.
You know, I ran into all my LA homies out there.
I
you
heard
know,
about that infamous trip to
Hey,
the
we
strip
was
club. I
out
heard
there.
about all that. Yep.
my first time in a strip club, Onyx.
Yeah.
My God. But yeah, but I was like, I don't know, you know? And he was just like, listen, like, you know, the program director out there, like, she's dope. She's good people. And they just last week let go of like 4 of their on-air personalities. Like, I think it was like the night guys, who were a group, and then their midday person.
Damn.
And I was like, okay. And he was like, here's her email address. Like, I'll put in a word for you. Send your air check. And I was like, oh my God. So I remember like I sent my air check, and I sent her an email with like my one sheet, and, you know, this is who I am. This is what I do. And even though I was like hella popping in LA and I did have all this experience, I didn't have that much on full-time on-air experience
right.
in terrestrial to be on, you know, a top 10 market radio station. But for me, I felt like I'm not going to go anywhere that's not top 10, not coming from LA, you know? And so she didn't get back to me because she got a lot of candidates.
Yeah.
This station was a big deal. And so I hit up my old boss, AD, and I was like, can you put in a word for me?
I need
the
the
same
lob.
person I quit with, right? And he
You
was like,
walked out on my shit.
Right.
Put your word. That's like, you know what I'm saying?
But, hey,
but you know what?
one thing I just forgot to tell you. Can I just get this live real quick before?
But the kind of person he is, and him knowing my heart, like, he picked up the phone and he called her and he was like, listen, I want to put you, like, I got this girl. She's really talented. Like, I would love if you could listen to her air check. And, you know, she really respected that coming from one of her peers. He helped me, like, redo my air check, and I sent it to her. And she flew me out to Houston, and I did my audition, and then she flew me back again, and I did another audition, and then she offered me the job and offered to move me to Houston. And I was scared shitless because all I knew was LA, and I'm one of those obsessive people about California. Like, like I have like LA tatted. I love Los Angeles, and even outside of the music, like, just even if I worked at McDonald's, like, I love Los Angeles. You know what I mean? Like Southern California. And I didn't know not one person in Houston. The one person I knew moved to LA like the week before I moved to Houston.
Get the fuck out of here.
So I didn't know not one single soul.
Not one person.
And I'm a woman moving across the country, moving herself
By
across
yourself.
the country alone. And, you know, I don't know anybody, but I just remember thinking, I'm 25. I don't have kids. I'm not in a serious relationship. Like, if I fail, I can pick
Always
myself
come back
back up.
to that. Yeah.
I have a lot of life ahead of me. Let me try. What do I lose by trying?
Right.
So my main objective in my mind was I signed a 2-year contract. I said, in my mind, I thought I'd only be there a year, but I was like, I'm going to stay here for 2 years and I'm going to save my money because they paid me really well. And I was getting paid really well for the first time in my career,
Right.
you know, without having to do 100 side hustles to supplement my income.
And you're living in Houston, which I'm assuming is definitely different than LA in terms of like the
What?
Yeah.
I went from living in an apartment in North Hollywood that was the size of a sardine can
Like
for
mine.
double the price
That's crazy. That's the shit I'm doing.
Yeah, that's the shit I'm in right now. Go
to
ahead.
moving into an apartment in Houston that was half the price, that I had a den, you know, a bedroom, a giant master bath. I had a balcony. I had a laundry room,
Wow.
an actual room with a washer and a dryer that I opened the door and walked into. Like,
Wow.
it was just space to me, like,
Yeah.
whoa, you know? And so I thought to myself, I'm going to stack. I'm going to save all my money. Any money I make from commercials or endorsements is going into my bank account.
Yeah.
You know, I bought a car cash, so I didn't have like a car note. I didn't have like
Bills.
a lot of outstanding bills.
Yeah.
Like I got bootleg cable, so it was a one-time payment of $75.
Yeah, you
like,
straight.
you know, so I was like, cool. Like my focus is to stack and get back to LA. I was so scared, you know. I was so depressed for the first few months too, because I was excited about the opportunity in my gig, but I had no one.
Right.
You know, I didn't have a
can imagine
soul.
going out there alone doing going through all of that alone.
So, how long are you out there before you meet Dwayne?
So here's what's crazy, and this is how God works too. It's like, you
Your
know, I
husband.
Yeah,
had
what
to
I
go
said.
out there for a reason, right? And so what's funny is I had come back to LA, I think, for the BET Awards. Or I had come back to LA for my birthday.
Okay.
And I had re-met Sway while I was out here. And the universe is amazing. That same week, first Charlemagne calls me and he says, I just had a dinner meeting with someone that works at MTV. Open your computer, send like your picture, your air check, and information about you to this email address. Shout out to my now friend Tiffany, who was the exec putting together this show. And he was like, send her all of this stuff. I just told her about you. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know,
Okay,
like
yeah.
I'm sitting in my living room in Houston. And this is like maybe 10 months since I've been out there. And so I send her everything. And I'm like, cool. Then I come to LA for my birthday. And I rerun into Sway. And me and him strike up this conversation. And we actually, my girl Bombay got us together for lunch.
Bombay.
Shout out to my girl April Bombay. So many stories that
Yeah, one of the other warriors over there at
that
K-Day
we
at
need
the
a whole
time.
nother
Yeah,
podcast.
right.
So we're all at lunch at Bossa Nova, and this magazine cover comes out with Rick Ross on it. You remember that cover he did with no shirt?
Yeah.
And he, you know, he was bigger than he is now,
Yeah.
so he had them things.
Yeah, the thing's hanging.
You know,
Yeah.
and so we were talking about that cover at lunch, and I'm like, man, Rick Ross has like beautiful breasts. You know, like.
That's nice.
And Sway just starts cracking up, and he's like, who are you? He was like, have you ever thought about doing radio?
That's crazy.
You know what's crazy?
And I
It's
was
on my
like,
air check right
What's
here.
crazy is this.
well, actually, I'm number one, and I got a show. And, and he was like, yo, I'm actually starting a radio show. He was like, no one knows about it yet, but I want you to be my co-host. And I was
Wow.
like, what?
10 months in,
Random.
you being in Houston, coming back to LA.
Imagine,
seeing that,
like,
yeah.
I could have, if I could have thugged it out, I would have never gone to Houston
Right,
because I could have
right,
just stayed in
right,
LA
right.
and you know, because I missed a lot by moving. Like that year that I moved, everybody took off. That I
Absolutely.
had had a hand in helping or at
Right.
least like celebrating. Everybody took off, and I'm way over here, and I'm like, the West Coast
looking at the party from afar,
the
like
West Coast
fuck.
finally getting shine, and I'm not a part of
Right,
it.
yeah,
Like,
that's some bullshit.
that hurt.
Yeah.
That hurt,
Yeah.
you know? But I was meant to be in Houston. So I was like, okay, well, you know, here's my info. Let me know. So I then have a birthday party in Houston at a club. I meet Dwayne there.
He randomly came to your birthday?
So come to find out, he used to listen to me on the radio. and
He
was on it.
Who this?
Hey, shout out to
Right out
Dwayne.
here.
Dwayne Brown, he was stalking his prey. You understand what I'm saying? We out here.
And, you know, he said that, you know, at that time, especially, it was really rare to like have content online and to go viral and to be on the blogs like as a personality. It was pretty rare. Not that many people were doing it. And I was one of those people who my interviews would always end up on the blogs and go like viral for the time. So he said that he had been listening to me on the radio and had also like seen my stuff online and thought I was dope. Like, he's a hip hop head. So he was like, he thought I was dope, and he was like, I really liked your voice. And he was like, so I Googled you, and then I really liked your picture.
Like, oh shit, she actually looked good.
Radio motherfuckers be ugly.
Yeah, she ain't got a radio face.
Oh God. So he showed up at my birthday party, which we had been talking about on social media, and he had started following me, and so he introduced himself to me at my birthday party. He was like, hey, what's up? Like, I follow you on Twitter. Like, I'm Dwayne.
Crazy.
And I was
He just walked up to you?
Yeah, well, my girlfriend had walked me by him because there was this thing called like what is it called? Like the money line that you do on your birthday out there, where everybody comes up and pins you with money on your birthday.
Kind of like the wedding, but
Yeah. I feel like it was called like a money tail because it's supposed to like drag on the floor.
Okay.
So she had taken me through all the sections of this club so that people could pin money on me.
Oh, shit.
And so like she brought me up and he was like, oh, hey, what's up? Like, and so we had started talking that night. And then I think we didn't exchange information, but we ended up exchanging information like a few weeks later. And we went out to the Tribe Called Quest documentary for our first date.
Oh, wow.
And then he was like, yo, have you ever heard of this dude named Kendrick Lamar? He was like, he has this project, like, Overly Dedicated, like...
He's trying to put you up on case.
no, not Overly Dedicated.
It was, no.
Was it? No, it was Overly Dedicated at the time,
it was after the EP.
So he was like, here, listen to this.
We'll
and he,
put
like,
you on to something
put
real
it on
quick.
the play in the car, and I was like, nigga,
let me show you
Let me show you these
First
pictures.
of all, whatever, But I was like, okay, he on it. Like,
Right,
he
right.
knows what's up. So, and after that, we were inseparable. It was my first year in Houston, and then I get the call about the TV show.
Fuck.
And they're like, fly to Houston. We want you to do a screen test. Fly to New York. We want you to do a screen test. Such and such. Like, we're going to move forward with the show. That same week, I hit Sway like, hey, I'm going to be in New York.
Yeah.
Like, let's get up. And he was like, launch my show with me. My show launches this week.
What?
He was like, I know, we still got to figure out like the co-host thing and the money. He was like, but just come launch my show with me this week. He was like, I think we could kill it. And I was like, oh my God.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah. So I took my vacation time and I went out for the first 2 days to do the MTV screen test. And then I got on his show and I launched his show and I did mornings with him for the whole week.
Was there any conflict of interest?
So,
because I know that's not terrestrial, it's satellite. So
yeah, not so much because like I think terrestrial doesn't, like they're like we're terrestrial, we're FM.
Right.
Like, we don't care about satellite. So a lot of people were able to do both, but also it was a time before Instagram. Like I think Instagram had just started. I didn't have an iPhone at the time, so I didn't have it.
Only for the iPhones. I remember that.
And so like news wasn't traveling as fast. So even though I did that in New York, people didn't really like at my station know about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I told my program director about it. I was like, hey, and she was like, oh, that's a good look for you.
Yeah,
like, cool. And so then like, I get a call like a week later, that the MTV show is looking like a go. Like, how soon can you be out here? Or, they were thinking like, oh, we could even fly you once a week from Houston. But I was like, F that. Like, let me go full force. I'm moving to New York.
Right.
And then Sway ended up hitting me like, man, we want to like give you a deal. Like, we want to make you an offer. Like, you were incredible with us. Because me and him had insane chemistry on that show
together. So you go from 0 to 100 on the New York shit real quick.
Like that. Everything fell into place. And so I talked to my program director and she let me out of my contract.
Really?
Thank God.
And this was it 10, 11, 12 months in or at this point?
This is like maybe my 11th month in Houston.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And my initial vision was I'm only going to be here a year. I knew I had a 2-year, but in my mind, for whatever reason, that had popped up. I definitely never saw myself. I up and moved.
Again.
I gave all of my furniture away because I didn't have like the money to really facilitate like a long distance move like that.
Right.
I didn't have an apartment, so I didn't know like what I was going to do when I lived there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I gave all my furniture away. I put everything else in boxes in a storage unit, and then I packed up 4 things of Tupperware and those bins, and I shipped it to myself, shipped it to the radio station like UPS.
Get the fuck out
And and I sold my car and I found a cheap flight and I flew to New York.
One-way ticket.
One-way ticket, yeah. And at that time, you know, I didn't have, like, I stayed with Charlemagne for a little bit in Jersey. And then one of my dear friends, one of my old friends, oldest friends, I should say, DJ EQ and Talib Kweli lived in Brooklyn.
Wow.
And so they let me live with them.
I love how these are your dear friends. Like, these are homies.
You lived with Talib Kweli?
Yeah.
These are homies.
Now, why I didn't know that you lived with Talib Kweli? That's not normal.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
I lived with them for 2 months in Park Slope, Brooklyn. And at that time, he had this like amazing brownstone in Park Slope, and I stayed in his son's room. So every night I was sleeping on a twin bed surrounded by like dinosaurs, you know, like all this different stuff.
Did you ever wake up like, yo, this shit crazy?
The thought is, how the fuck did I get here? And why I'm in Talib Kweli's son's bed right now with dinosaurs and shit?
Life was moving so fast, and I haven't had a chance to even tell them this, but I am so eternally grateful to DJ EQ, who is one of the most talented DJs and women who rep for the culture, and like she's a legend, you know.
Absolutely.
And Talib for opening their home to me, like
they didn't have to do that.
No, and of course, like I was a big fan of both of theirs, and you know we have built a great relationship because they also live in LA, and she and I had started this Ustream show.
I remember that.
In their garage studio.
Yeah.
So she and I had been doing that like the year prior to me moving to Houston, and so when I needed
sidebar, you also had Black Hippie there too. I remember watching that particular show. Like, yo, she got all those people.
I had Kendrick in the garage doing a Ustream freestyle in front of 25 people.
That shit was hilarious. I was one of them 25 though.
And so when I went to New York, thank God they gave me, you know, the chance. They were like, I was like, I need somewhere to stay.
Yeah.
I don't have any time to find anything. And they're like, yeah, come on. And so I stayed there for a few months. And at that time, like, life was just weird for me then because, like, I had just fallen in love. Like, me and Dwayne met.
I was about to say
and
that.
3 weeks later, I moved to New York. You know, and I was like, what? You know, and 2 weeks in, we're both like, I love you, you know?
Wow.
And so we're just like, we got engaged in 2 months, you know? And so at that time, it was really, and this is something for a whole nother podcast, but like spiritually and emotionally, I went through a lot because in a 2-year time span, less than 2 years, in a 14-month time span, I went from living in LA to living in Houston, getting acclimated to that, to meeting someone, to moving to New York. Like, my life was topsy-turvy. I probably was not making a lot of the best decisions I could make because it was a lot, you know, and I just had to hit the ground running. So I would stay in Park Slope and I would sleep in my little twin bed surrounded by, you know, dinosaurs. A T-Rex. And then I would get on the train, which I'd never in my life ridden a subway. And I'd get on the train and I'd catch it, you know, to Manhattan, and I would go to work. And then I would go into the morning show, and then I would walk down the street and I would go to MTV, and then I would get on the train and I would come back. And then every Friday at noon, when I was done for the day, I would catch a cab to LaGuardia and I would get on a flight to Houston, and I would stay with Dwayne in Houston until Sunday night, a red eye, I'd catch it to New York. And then Monday morning, I would start it again. And it was a lot.
But you know what it sounds like? And like you said, the universe works in amazing ways. God works in extremely amazing ways. You did all of that prior to that. You know what I'm saying? Before doing that, we were talking about earlier how you lived from city to city in LA, and when you were doing radio, doing the same thing. I think God was preparing you for this type of lifestyle. Yeah. And now it's to the extreme level, but I think that going through those situations prior definitely helped you go through it at a much greater scale with the whole New York move, you know, from LA to Houston to New York.
Yeah.
And within the industry and falling in love and things like that. How, for you, going through that, what did you have any reservations as far as becoming into a relationship? Like, what was your mindset with that? Like, knowing that you had to move, just getting into it with this guy, like,
yeah, I
love you, but I got to move. And, you know, what were the reservations there? And how was he receptive to that information?
It was so different because I think, like, up until that time, I had never let love slow me down. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought of myself more like it's going to sound ridiculous, but kind of like a stallion in like a field. Like I was just like, I'm running. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm glorious with my main phone and I'm like, like just running, you know? And the thing that was the most important to me was my career. So of course I dated, but I wasn't like in love with anybody. And, you know, I used to have like this thing about me where I felt like the second you started to care about me, I would run away.
Really?
And I'd be like, oh, I don't think that this is gonna work.
So relationships, early in the day, relationships, you would find would you find an excuse, or would you naturally just become unattracted to somebody?
Both.
You should have came to me. I give the best relationship advice.
The worst. The worst. Like you'll make people like really ruin their lives with your advice.
No.
The shit you do work for you. They don't work for everybody.
It does work for me. It works for me. It works for me.
Yeah. So you know, when I met him, initially I was just like, okay, like he's cool, but.
This ain't, you
like,
know,
I'm
career.
not, I gotta, like, I gotta focus, you know? And then we started hanging out and I felt something I had never felt before. And, you know, we just became so tight so fast. And, you know, I remember 2 weeks in, he was like, I love you. And I was like, what? And I remember, like, I responded back, like, thank you. He was hot.
He was hot?
I appreciate your request. And just want to let
like,
you know.
Who says thank you? And I was like,
me.
I don't know how I feel. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. Like, I know I need to move. I don't know what's, like, happening. And then I remember it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, maybe a week later, this song came on the old school R&B station. And I was like, him? Yeah, I was like, oh my God, okay, let me stop putting all these walls up. Let me stop always fighting against, you know.
What's coming?
Yeah, and I was like, let me just put the walls down and give it a chance. Because I had never really, like, I had never had a long-term relationship before that. I had never really given anybody I hadn't given myself a real chance at that. I was just too focused. And so I was like, okay. And you know, I remember I was like, oh, you know, I love you too. And everything just took off, but I knew I had to move. And so in my mind, I was thinking, I'm going to go to New York and, you know, when we see each other, but we're not like in a full-time relationship, you know, because it'll be impossible. Right. And I remember he was like, oh, nah, this is going to work. Like,
oh, no, this shit is happening.
Don't make this shit work.
I came to the club to get your ass.
He was like, we go together, we're exclusive. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, all right, I'm going to follow your lead. Like, let's go, you know? And so it was a long distance thing. And we got engaged a couple months later, but we were long distance for a year and then we got married.
And I would imagine him, you know, obviously him playing football, like he was already prepped for that life of having to be from city to city, state to state. So whoever was in that had to be within that same mental space. And for him, I think him seeing you, and you can agree, you know, confirm it or not, him seeing you doing your own shit, having your own thing, and like not being the person that is just going to stay home and waiting, like that probably was an attraction to him. Like, oh shit, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely the shit. Like, I think
I love it.
I think for sure,
definitely that nigga for sure.
You know, and I think, and no disrespect to anybody that may have come before me, but I think I was kind of rare. Like, I was something that he definitely hadn't experienced before. Right. So I definitely think that was a draw, you know. But I think it also, like, once our relationship got going, it was a hard area to navigate at first, because I feel like when you fall in love, especially for someone like him who is very much like an alpha male, very like aggressive, like you guys know him, sweet guy, like great person, like great energy, great heart, but he'll fuck you up. Like he's also a beast, right? You know, and I think that was kind of weird territory for us to navigate, especially the first year, because for the same reasons he was drawn to me, those were the same reasons he started to really resent this shit and be like, I don't want the world to have you. Wow. You know what I mean? Kind of like, you're mine. I know you're special and amazing. That's why I wanted your ass.
Me
like,
man.
Yeah.
You come with me.
But now I don't want people having access to you. I don't want you in front of all these dudes all the time. You know? So that was tough, at least for me, because I felt really like defeated. I felt like, but this is who I am. This is who I've always been. Like, I have dreams, I have goals. And he was like, you don't need to work. And I was like, what? Like, that was heartbreaking to me, because I'm like, this is really how you met me. Right. and that was so hard. And I think as we grow, and once we got to know each other more, he was like, oh, I get it. Like, I get it, and I'm sorry,
So how much time did it take for him to adjust to that?
I think, he was able at least to intellectually adjust to it really fast, because the first conversation we had, I was like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, you can't ever tell me that I shouldn't be doing something that is my passion. If you have a right to go after your dreams,
I'm gonna do the
why
same.
shouldn't I have a right to achieve mine and be whoever God wants me to be? And he was like, nah, I get that. Like, my bad, know? And then I think we fell in love so fast. We got engaged and married so fast. We didn't fully know each other.
Right.
We knew we loved each other. We knew there was something maybe on a sacred contract soul level.
Right.
We were destined to be together, but we didn't really know each other. We were just going with the feeling, And I think the longer we stayed together and the more we got to know each other by heart and the real ins and outs and what makes me tick and what makes him tick, it was just like, oh yeah, like, I think you're so talented and I support you 1,000% whatever you do.
Do you? So now, okay, because we got to get out of here in a second. You're going to
have to make this like a 3-parter, right?
I want you to plug your...
That's all. Fuck that. Go ahead.
I want you to plug your shit. All right.
Okay.
So you became an author. You started writing a book. Right. Fast forward all the way till now.
Okay, so real quick, let me say,
I got one question, and we'll end the relationship on this. Right.
Okay.
Did you have any reservations? Because you hear the stigmas of athletes and dating athletes. For you, walking into the relationship, was that something for you? Like, okay, I got reservations on possibly becoming in a relationship with somebody like that, or did you just kind of let the guards down and say fuck it?
Yeah, I think at first, in general, just kind of how I was from being a woman in a male-dominated industry, I was like, I don't want to be with nobody famous at all. Like, I think, like, right before him, I had been dating this dude who was like a teacher. Like, I wanted like a regular schmegular guy.
That's what I want.
You know what I mean? So yeah, at first, like, when he was first kind of pursuing me, I was like, nah, like, football player.
So that was another thing that was part of the wall being up. It was more than that was a legitimate excuse for me at the time. You're still not being on with the relationship, but then you have this extra thing on top of that, like not wanting to be with somebody that is of the industry or public.
Yeah, and I think for me, just in my thinking at the time, I felt like it was just too much of a distraction.
Gotcha.
A distraction for me being able to do what I need to do.
Gotcha.
Like, I wanted to be able to turn off and we can be together and then I can be focused and not like this kind of more of a public life. You know what I mean?
Right. Don't you think that like say for instance with the Lala situation, don't you? I'm not saying that it's right or whatever, but I'm saying, don't you think don't you have an idea that this kind of come with the territory? Like when you date an athlete or a rapper or
anybody in the industry,
anybody in the limelight, because you a wife of a football player. So I'm like, and I never asked you that before, but isn't that like something that comes with the stigma?
What?
Like infidelity, or there might be chicks, or there might be this, or there might be that.
I mean, that it gets publicized a lot, but I don't think you would ever imagine that comes with it.
No, I'm saying so if I was to date a rapper, like a female rapper or some, I would automatically in my mind be prepared for that. Is that
for
wrong?
that to happen?
Not to happen, but I know that's definitely like more of a possibility than the teacher, in my opinion.
Well, no, because I think anybody that's going to cheat, no matter your profession, especially in this day and age, you can always get asked like anywhere, especially with Instagram. Like anybody can slide. The dude that is picking up trash on the side of the road
somebody
can hit.
DMs,
like, he can still slide in a DM of somebody if he's with another person. It may not be as much constant attention, but there's always ass, you know?
I said that too. Food, I mean, it's easier to get ass than food. It really
yeah,
did.
I think, at least speaking for me, I can never speak for anybody else or their relationship. For me, that did not ever cross my mind, and I did not think that was a possibility when we got together.
Damn.
All right. So, fast forward. I mean, you've at that point you did the New York shit.
Yeah. Okay. So let me skip because we got to wrap this up. I know it's so long, but there's still so much to say. We're gonna flash forward for the next 5 years. So, after about a year, I'm like, okay, I can't be long distance and married. Like, that was really hard.
Right.
And the show that I was doing for MTV, we did a full season of it, but then it didn't get picked back up for season 2. So I was like, okay, I don't have that. And I was like, well, I can stay in New York, continue working on Sway's show, thug it out, find more TV opportunities. But like our marriage, there's no way it would have survived.
Right.
If the first year we're married, we already didn't know each other that well.
So you're battling all these
like
things
there's no
anyway.
chance we'd still be married today if I stay living in New York, you know? And I think at that moment, that was the right choice for me. I absolutely had to choose my marriage and a way for us to build it and build the foundation. So that mixed with the fact that I really, really did not like the person who was programming that station at Sirius at the time. Like he was, and I believe he doesn't work there anymore, but he at least to me and my understanding, he had a real issue with women, especially women with experience. Like he was nicer to women that he thought he was building and molding. But if anybody came in there with any type of experience that could perhaps, he had a problem with. And so he used to like be very disrespectful to me.
Oh, wow.
Wildly disrespectful, like yell in my face, like touching my nose, and his spit is hitting me in the face. And I was like, God damn, like I can't be missing my husband and be going through this every day. Like,
right.
So I walked away from that show, and I walked away from New York, and I moved back to Houston. You know, just the way amazing timing is, I moved back to Houston, and I was just kind of focused on coming to LA for auditions and doing stuff here. And then I got a call to be at the radio station that was launching in Houston by the amazing, illustrious Doc Winter. Another alley-oop from Charlemagne. And I had a chance to help launch their amazing station, 93.7 The Beat in Houston, and then be a personality there. So then for really the past several years, I've been on air in Houston and doing stuff out there. Yeah.
But you walk away from that recently, right? That opportunity, you know, but within that, I want to talk about this journey because we've talked about it throughout the whole theme of the show as far as the energy and universe and God. And it kind of goes into the theme of the book that you're going to be having that's going to be available.
Bliss.
Crystal Bliss. You launched your company, Karma Bliss. I remember you were doing a show out here. You were recording for one of your shows and you were telling me right before you launched it, like, yo, I'm working on this. Give people a little breakdown of what Karma Bliss is, how you got introduced to that side, and because a lot of people have no clue about the crystals and that side of the world, and leading into the book that you have. So,
unfortunately, everybody listening, we yacked it up for so long about some of our favorite subjects, like LA hip hop. I didn't get a chance to really kind of make you understand and lead you into this part of my life, but so spirituality has always been massively important to me. You know, I was walking through some tough times in the last few years. I went through like at least a couple bouts of what felt like real depression, and just a lot of, what's the word I want to use? A lot of just instability, like moving around so much and having your life change so dramatically back to back for years. Like, you know, inside you're just kind of up and down like a roller coaster. And I felt restless and I felt unsure and I felt like what is life really? Like, what do I really want? Who do I really want to become? Like, there has to be more than just this entertainment world and this constantly, you know, hopping around. So I got really into meditation through going to a meditation retreat, and which eventually led me to do that and join these different excursions for the next couple of years. And I ended up getting certified to teach meditation and to teach Vedic teaching. So a big part of my life is really 100% wrapped around wellness, wrapped around spirituality, wrapped around self-discovery. I'm huge on self-discovery. I'm huge on asking myself those questions that are sometimes uncomfortable to get me through the deeper levels of who I am and find those answers, and helping other people do those things. And a lot of it, like intuitively, that's always been who I am. But then I also have more method and tools now to help other people do that. So I launched my company Karma Bliss, which is all about connecting people with tools of self-discovery, getting people to meditate, you know, teaching people about crystals and all these different things that I've collected on my personal journey of the soul to aid myself. And in that, I got this amazing opportunity. I did an article in New York Magazine. They interviewed me about my company, which led me to have this great opportunity to write a book about crystals and about meditation. And, you know, for me, a big thing has been like existing in these two worlds, existing in this world of entertainment, which is all I've ever known for my entire adult life. Yeah. And existing in this world of like soul searching and self-discovery and divine connection that means so much to me, and trying to more easily bring those two worlds together.
I still have a hard time meditating.
I've never even really tried that shit.
You know what the thing is? You just have to be, I think it's hard for everybody at first in theory because we think it's so revolutionary to sit still.
Right.
And to like not do something.
It's
to be
always
quiet.
something going, especially living in Los Angeles. Like, boom, 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 boom. Even though it's a, you know, obviously way slower pace in New York, but there's still stuff going on. So it's hard to sit down. How did you sit down, and how were you able to navigate through that part? How were you able to sit down and really?
I had to. I didn't have a choice. I was broken. You know, I felt really, really, really broken. And I felt really lost. I needed to hear something else. I needed to know more about why my journey was happening in the way that it's happening. Like, we all have like crosses we bear. We all have, you know, things that sums of experiences that lead us to who we are in this moment. And we all carry certain levels of pain due to those experiences. And I think all of mine that I had been carrying from childhood to now, all these different experiences, finally I reached the point where I was like, fuck. Yeah. Like, God, I need something else. Like, I can't, you know, like, I'm always known for being strong. I'm everybody's, you know, shoulder in my life, and I'm everybody's psychologist or therapist in my life. And you know, there came a point where I was just like,
"What about me?
I need to be me too. Like, I need to fall too sometimes, and get support, and you know." And I was kind of in one of those moments where I was tired of being so strong and so helpful to people and the fixer of everybody else's life and issues, and
loaning motherfuckers $300.
Oh, whatever. and I didn't know what else to do. And so, you know, a friend had recommended this like meditation detox, and I was like, fuck it. Like, I need to find something.
Try something, right.
And I went there, and it changed my whole life.
And this is how many years ago?
Maybe 5 years ago. Yeah. Wow. And it changed my whole entire life. And once I started doing it, I mean, it's not to say that it's always easy. Like, I'm not always like the Dalai Lama, you know, but you just got to kind of like push through it. You just got to try to stay seated. And I think if nothing else, don't get up. Even if you start thinking of their thoughts, even if you get fidgety, just commit to yourself that for this 20 minutes, you're not going to open your eyes. Because the world is still going on. Right. Like, it's you're still going to be able to scroll. You're still going to be able to check your phone. If you can wake up in the morning and sit on the toilet and 15 minutes go by because you're scrolling after you've already finished, like, you can sit still and meditate, you know? And I think the biggest thing is, when a thought comes up, gently release the thought. When you start thinking about your to-do list or whatever else, you get anxiety in your chest, just say, I'm going to choose not to think about this right now. Just like when you're at work and you got to push something in the back of your mind, or just like when something agitating happens and you got to push it to the back of your mind. Do the same thing with your thoughts while you're meditating.
Now, when did you get hip to the crystals like that? Because that's a whole different thing. I would imagine that's, you know, there's, and you can kind of break it down briefly about, there's stuff with good health, there's stuff for, you know, energy, there's things for like, how when did you first get hip to that? And obviously leading into the book, and you'll give all the information in that as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, right? Definitely. Okay. So I've always been into crystals since I was a little girl. Excuse me. I didn't really know what they were, but I was like drawn to them. Like, you know, excuse me, you could ever go to those like the museum, like the science museum, and they'd have like those little pouches of tumbled rocks when you're a kid, and you'd be like, oh, and they're all these different colors.
I used to make fun of people with that shit.
Oh,
no, sorry for you.
I didn't know. I didn't know what it was.
And so I used to always be into those, and then I kind of forgot about it, and then I got really into it when I dived deep into my meditation journey, and you know, because I think a lot of things just kind of coincide, like a lot of like, when you're meditating, you're looking to open yourself up to things that are bigger than you, and to be able to have energy poured into you.
Absolutely.
And release control. And I think that goes really hand in hand, the way of the seeker, with many different things, including crystals. You know, you find yourself opened up to a lot of different tools and a lot of different ways of looking at the world and utilizing things. And so when I started doing that, I started getting like really, really into crystals, into their energy, into researching them, finding out how to utilize them. You know, I think even if like you're like, that's too juju, like crystals can't, you know, what is this, Harry Potter? They're also beautiful, you know, and it's a connection in nature. And the more we connect ourselves to nature, the better your life is, you know.
All right, well, Crystal Bliss.
Crystal Bliss. It is available for pre-order now.
Dude.
You can go on my Instagram or my Twitter for the link. It's in my bio, Devi Brown, Devi Brown, on Twitter and Instagram.
She's getting it off right now.
And click the link. You can pre-order it now, and it'll be in stores October 3rd.
I'm gonna pre-order mine right now.
Yay!
Do that support for sure, man. It's so good to not only call you radio host, to, you know, author, all of that, but definitely our friend, and we appreciate you coming through. I'm glad we got a chance to do this. We're gonna have to do like.
This is so long. You gotta make it a two-parter.
A two-parter.
Because I feel like someone's gonna look and they'll be like, 2 hours? I'm not listening to this.
You be surprised. Motherfuckers be listening, dog.
Hey, it's crazy that I didn't think people listen to me, but I listen that long. And people listen.
Yeah.
Especially traffic out here. Shout out to everybody. I just showed Chuck something today. Shout out to everybody that listen to us on the iHeartRadio app.
Please do that. Subscribe
on iTunes, Google Play. And shout out to everybody that subscribed.
Absolutely, man. It's Homegrown Radio. Chuck Dizzle, DJ Hed. Thank you so much, Devi Brown.
Thank you, guys.
And I do want to say this though before we stop. I love Dev. I don't really love a lot of women like that, but Dev is one of them.
I'm honored. Thank you. I love you, Hed. I love you, Chuck. You guys are so dope.
Love you too.
I am dope.
Y'all are dope humans.
That is true. Is it true?
You know what I'm saying?
All right, man. We out.